people have different definitions of what sustainable means. When I say it, what I mean is that it can last. So a lot of people who I work with, they're sprinting, they're hustling, they're like moving really quickly, and it's not something they can actually maintain long term. You're going to get sick. You're going to have things that happen in your life. Like when you have kids, I think it's just more obvious. Like you can't ignore it anymore. I get so many people coming into my coaching room who say like, I think you're going to fix me. And my whole thing is like, there's nothing to fix here, girlfriend. So many of the things you're experiencing and the natural tendencies you have are probably your greatest superpower, but we have to figure out how to work with them. So part of this is like being in community, having a coach, talking to people really gives you permission to stop being self-critical. Basically a giant permission slip, to be less hard on yourself.
Hey there, I'm Kaylin Wood, and this is Money Matters for Moms, the show where busy moms turn overwhelm into abundance. Each week we'll talk side hustles, saving hacks, wealth tips, and some energy tips to help make it all stick. Real tools for real financial freedom. No ramen required.
Today, I'm talking with Jenni Gritters. She's a business coach for solopreneurs who are looking for simplicity and stability. She offers several different programs to help you build a business of one that feels like home. She also co-owns a content agency called the Riverwoods Media Group. Jenni, I'm so glad you're
I'm
here.
so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I love the fact that you work with solopreneurs. Do you mind explaining that term? Because some people might not agree with it.
I would be happy to. So I actually started my career as a freelancer, which I think fits into this solopreneur bucket. It means that you're an entrepreneur working by yourself. So people who are freelancers identify as this, but I also have a lot of folks who are independent consultants. I have folks who run businesses of one that are small businesses, but it's really just them, creators, people teaching on the internet, a lot of coaches. So anybody who's working basically alone, even if you have a few contractors, it's a different kind of business than if you're running a whole team. So that's the group of people I work with most often. And it just so happens that many of them are parents or folks with chronic illness, like building businesses that really accommodate their lives, because that feels important to me that it's a life first presentation of the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. And so how did you get to focus on that
So,
group?
like I said, I was a freelancer for a little while. So, I actually started my career as a journalist. I was a science journalist. I was writing about psychology. You can find my writing in the New York Times and all sorts of other places. So, I did that for about 12 years. And probably 10 years into that, I got laid off, which is a really common story for folks who are in the media landscape. Like things change so quickly that the teams get disbanded and people move around. So, when I got laid off, I was really burnt. I was working at this 9 to 5 job. I mean, it wasn't 9 to 5, it was 8 to 7. And I wanted to try something different. So I had a few offers for projects and decided I would freelance as a 3 month trial period. And of course, that was 6 years ago. So I never stopped. But it ended up being a really good way for me to have more agency in my work. And especially as the media industry was sort of shrapneling, there was a lot of space for me to make decisions that felt safer actually than being at a full time job. So I started coaching in this space just because I had had so much success setting up my business, making 6 figures like right out of the gate. It's pretty amazing. I was making double my former salary, working about half the time. And it was sort of blowing my mind, right? That was even possible. So when I started talking about it, people started saying, teach me, teach me. I was like, I don't know if I want to teach this. And so I went back and got a coaching certification as well. So you'll still see my business has some writing in it, but it's not really that traditional journalism work. It's more writing for different clients, people like you and me. I help them set up content streams in their businesses. And then a lot of my work is coaching now. So I've been coaching for about 4 years now and have worked with hundreds of people who have businesses of one, many of whom are moving from freelancer to entrepreneur, which is a slight mindset shift, but who have decided this is a long game for them. They want to run their own boat. They want to be on their own. And I think it's a good decision in this landscape for a lot of different industries.
Yeah, absolutely. You were running your own business already when you had kids. So how did that change things for you?
Yes. So I have two kids right now. Lily is 2 and Liam is 4.5. My pregnancy with Liam was really dicey. I had been working for myself for about a year and a half and I had hyperemesis. So I threw up 10 times a day. And as you can imagine, running a business while throwing up and feeling awful was a whole different thing. I was like in my power, hustling, building things, and all of a sudden it was like my feet got knocked out from under me. And so I had to make a lot of different decisions. And that's where this sustainability piece comes in because I had to change what I was doing. I had to work with clients who were easy. All the work had to be asynchronous. I couldn't do any coaching because I would be like, let me go, throw up in the middle of our session. Like I was really nauseous. So my brain didn't work as well. It was a pretty quick initiation into, I think what we all know is really complicated about parenthood, which is there's a lot going on. There's like multiple priorities. So I managed to keep the business running, had my son early. He was in the NICU. Everything sort of conspired to make that a really challenging experience. And I came out the other side with a very different identity, temperament, way I wanted to live my life. I would not have said that I was someone who even had thought about being a primary caregiver. And then my son was born, and I was like, I want to spend time with him. So I worked about 20 hours a week after he was born. And my husband was an ICU nurse. And so he was gone like 60 hours a week. Like in the moment, it was very hard. In retrospect, it taught me a lot of things about making decisions, holding my priorities, setting boundaries. Like I ended up earning the same amount in the smaller period of time, I think, because I had to make so many clear choices. And then when my daughter came around, I mean, you have multiple kids, like it's just more. She's a little firecracker. So my husband actually left his job at that point, and I then leaned into my business really heavily. So it's grown a lot since she was born, which is a really intentional decision. And I took 4 months off with each of them. So I'm a totally different person than I was before I had kids. And that showed up in my business. My business had to change to accommodate all of those identity shifts. What I work with people a lot on is like, all of a sudden my business feels like a too small pair of pants. It doesn't work for me in this season of my life. So how do we adapt and shift and flex to get them to a place where it feels good again? Especially when you have little kids. It changes so often, so often.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You said something interesting about building a sustainable business. So, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think people have different definitions of what sustainable means. When I say it, what I mean is that it can last. So a lot of people who I work with, they're sprinting, they're hustling, they're like moving really quickly. And it's not something they can actually maintain long term. You're going to get sick. You're going to have things that happen in your life. Like that's just how it goes. When you have kids, I think it's just more obvious. You can't ignore it anymore. So I talk a lot about seasonality, about how there's seasons in your business where you're really running quickly. And then there's seasons where you actually are not, where you need to step back and sort of come up with a way to look internally and figure out like what you need and how things need to change. It's also having enough stability and having systems built in. So financially, in terms of like having support in your business, setting up something that feels like it can last and like it's actually safe for you. So I often say for a lot of the people I work with, their businesses are expressions of their nervous system, how safe they feel. So a lot of the work we're doing when I say sustainable is actually about, do you feel safe here? Can you keep doing this? Do you have hope that it's going to work? It feels like philosophical work that then gets landed in the systems, the business model, the finances, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And that's very different from most business coaches that
It
I
is.
have talked with because
It is.
many of them are saying you have to just invest and hit the ground running and go, go,
Totally.
go, right?
Yeah, and I don't believe that. I mean, I've done it, right? And I assume you've probably had seasons like that too, where it's like, wake up early, stay up late, like work, 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 work. I work 25 hours a week still, and my business hit $40,000 last month. I mean, it's not linear, and I really don't believe that you have to hustle, but it requires a lot of internal work to figure out, do I believe in these rules? Do I think I have to ascribe to them? Who's telling you about these rules? Like, do these people actually have children? So I said a lot of the folks I work with have chronic illness. Like, we're just not living lives where that paradigm works for us. So we have to figure out a different way of doing it. I often say what I do is very quietly revolutionary. Like I'm kind of telling you, screw that. Let's do something different. Because that wasn't built for you. Like that way of thinking was not built for people with cyclical bodies and who are caregivers and all the
Right.
other things we deal with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. And you also run the Riverwoods Media Group where you're a
Yeah.
co-owner.
My husband and I run it together. He's my co-founder. So he does website design. After being a journalist for 12 years, I have a deep skill with words. And so part of this evolution for me has been figuring out how I want to use that. I actually work with, I call them emerging thought leaders, people who have something to teach. The content takes different shapes. So sometimes people put me on a content retainer where I'm helping them do all of their monthly emails and all sorts of things like that. For some people, it's about launching newsletters or podcasts. And then we do a lot of content repurposing, which is taking things you've already built and like turning it into other words. And then my husband also does website design. So sometimes we'll come in and do sort of a rebrand in conjunction with some of these other things. So It's cool. It totally organically just started happening because a lot of my clients started asking, could you help? We've done a session now about branding. How do I actually land it? Like, can you help with that? So it's fun, you know? It was kind of a surprise, to be honest, which I think is the best kind of thing in your business when something kind of comes up organically.
Exactly. It feels like the
Mhm.
universe is kind of setting it in motion.
Conspiring. Yeah, it's
Yes.
like, okay. I always say it's like the train is already rolling. You just have to get on. Yeah.
When you're supposed to be the conductor, it's always a little surprising.
Yeah. You're like, wait, hold on. I mean, the best things in my life, though, have happened that way. I think where there's this natural momentum. So, the content agency is about a year old. So I think there's still a lot of pieces I'm figuring out because running that and a coaching business is not small. So figuring out where to put my effort and energy is like always a thing I'm learning as it all evolves. Believing I
Yes.
have the capacity for all of it.
Well, but because your business is sustainable, you do.
Yes. I mean, I'm working 4 days a week, right? So there is actually a lot of margin in my life, and that's really important. I live in a mountain town, so going hiking, paddleboarding, getting outside is actually a really important counterbalance to me. Gardening, making sourdough bread, like there's a lot of things I do that are non-cerebral to reground me, so I actually have the capacity to show up in a big way in the other parts of my business. Yeah.
That's cool. Also, you were talking about the relational
Mhm.
ideas, and it sounds like you really are very in tune with relating with people, especially people who are just starting a new business or thinking about it. So, if you were talking to someone like that, what's the one thing that you would tell
I
them?
would tell them you're not doing it wrong. I think I get so many people coming into my coaching room who say like, I think you're gonna fix me, you know? And my whole thing is like, there's nothing to fix here, girlfriend. So many of the things you're experiencing and the natural tendencies you have are probably your greatest superpower, but we have to figure out how to work with them. So part of this is like being in community, having a coach. Talking to people really gives you permission to stop being self critical. I mean, I don't do well with a structured schedule. For years, I felt like I was inconsistent. The thing is, my body, my system is inconsistent. My children are inconsistent. Like, of course, I'm inconsistent. And so part of what I need to do is follow my creative whims. And that's actually a much more powerful way for me to run my business. So you're not doing it wrong. Also, running a business is very hard. And especially at the beginning, it's all trial and error. And like, there's going to be things that don't work. My coach is always telling me, Jenny, everything doesn't have to work. But it is all an experiment. So I like to give people a big permission slip, especially in those first few years. Like, it's just new, and you're just learning. I've been doing this content stuff for 12 years and coaching for 5. I've learned along the way. What works now, I learned because something didn't work. So basically a giant permission slip. To be less hard on yourself, ask questions about yourself. Take some time to look inward and figure out like, are you talking to yourself kindly? How are you relating to the experience that you're having right now?
Kindness and grace. I love
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like I always say to people in the first year, like, this is when everyone quits. Stay. It's hard. Running a business is hard. And if you stay, it's going to get easier. Or you'll learn how to stay with the waves, ride them, you know? Yeah.
Right. So, if you stay in your business for more than a year, you're already doing better than most people.
Even 6 months. Yeah, even 3 months. Most people get to the idea part and then they say that's too scary. It's a big deal. If you've actually, birthed an idea in your brain and then put it out into the world, I mean, it's a huge deal. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not just something that is like buying a franchise from somebody else.
It's personal and there's no rules. I think that's the thing. Like everybody's walking around looking for someone to give them the cookie cutter. And I think that actually keeps people feeling really trapped because they'll try to use something that worked for someone else and it doesn't work for them. And they're like, there's something wrong with me. And like, no, actually, we just have to figure out what your unique version is. I always say, like, you're going to walk out of work with me with a business that doesn't look like anybody else's. And that should be true, if it's a true expression of who you are.
Absolutely. Well, Jenny, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you today.
Of course. Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Money Matters for Moms. I hope today's episode left you inspired to take one little step forward. Check out the resources in the show notes and share this with another mom who's ready to thrive. You've got this, because abundance is easier than you might think.